the fantastic church first steps. Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be at. Go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city. Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Hope everybody is doing all right. Of course, we gotta say what's up to the party people in the chat. We got my man Alejandro. Que lo que? It's good to see you, sir.
My guy.
You know what I mean? And of course, if you have not yet already, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend and tell a friend that's him again. Please share this link. And if you like how it goes down with BK, you can show your appreciation via some digital coinage in the PayPal link at the top of the chat. Or you can be a monthly supporter of BK and become a patron. We get assortment of teaching goodies of interesting tidbits of information to enhance your personal Bible study. So, with that being said, I am with a near and dear friend of mine's all the way from the D, apologist in Detroit, Dr. Doom himself. What's going on, sir?
Hard work, dedication. No. I'm good, man. I'm good, man. It's good to be here. Happy to be here. Happy to catch up with you. It's been a minute. And yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So for those who might not know, Chris, your actual vocation, it's very interesting. It's a vocation that we usually hear people doing abroad, but you do it here in your area. So can you just explain exactly what you are and well, we know what you are, you're a human being, but what you do.
Yeah, I'm a local missionary. I'm a missionary, just like any other missionary. You're someone that has been called to a particular region, locale, to plant and sell the gospel. I mean, sell, plant and share the gospel, sell the gospel. You can't sell the gospel. This gospel is free. That said, like I think most people encounter or conceptualize missions as sort of like overseas, like transplanting somewhere else. Whereas in my case, I'm actually a missionary to my hometown, the place I was born and raised, the city of Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, so you when you actually think about the command to take the gospels to the ends of the earth, particularly the account of it in the book of Acts, right before Jesus ascends, he says, "You shall receive power after the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be witnesses of me in Jerusalem," which was the hometown of the apostles, Judea, Samaria, and to the othermost parts of the world. And so Judea is within this list as well. And yeah, so I am fortunate enough to know many local missionaries. As a matter of fact, I actually became a local missionary in part because I became aware that this was a potential path. And so once I recognized that, I saw, oh, that's really where my heart is. That's really where I feel. That's really more of a capacity in which I feel called to serve God's kingdom. And so yeah, so here I am. God opened the door. There were a handful of like circumstances that sort of led, COVID being one of them, led to me actually becoming a missionary. And here I am today, still doing it 5 years later.
That's great because it's so rare when you find someone, and it shouldn't be, but it's so rare when you find someone who, one, enjoys what they do, and two, they're good at it. And when you are a believer and you can actually make a living proclaiming the gospel and defending it, discipleship, the fact that this is what you do for a living. You wake up and you have all these different appointments, training sessions, service. It's like your whole world is about spreading the word of God. Man, that's just such an amazing thing that how few of us get to do that on a full-time basis. So I just think it's very admirable, and maybe I'm a little jealous. Like that's
Yeah.
what you do for a living. That's amazing.
Well, don't be jealous. Maybe that might be a call God has for you one day, if that's what's on your heart. I mean, I've long had a desire to teach people, tell people about Jesus, teach them all things that He has commanded them. And my path was
All
that
right.
of,
There's something going on
yeah,
with your table or something. I'm hearing something.
I hear it too. Can you? I thought it was my head moving,
I don't
making
know
some.
what it is. It's no. I'm. It's like a wobbly,
Oh,
vibrating thing. I don't know what that
I
is.
got it. Do you still hear it?
No.
Good. Okay, I know what it was. It was my feet on the table shaking.
Oh, good. Great. Great.
That's what it
Thanks.
was.
You're just so happy to be here that you just tapping your feet.
No,
Uh,
I played basketball tonight and I came and my whole body, it's got like very, very, very minor aches. And so stretching helps. And so I was really kind of stretching my ankles and my legs and
well,
stuff,
we
kind of
all can hear you
stretching
stretching,
my,
sir.
yeah.
We all,
I'm gonna stop stretching until we done.
thank you. Appreciate that.
My pleasure.
So, one of the reasons why you're here, well, you're my brother and I love you. That's one of the reasons. But as of late, the UA has been scouring the world. We've been globetrotting a little bit. A
Oh,
lot of us have been to Johannesburg in Africa for an apologetics conference. And you, sir, not to be outdone, you stretched your limbs. Don't stretch them now, but you stretch your limbs, and you've gone
yeah.
across as well. Where were you recently, sir?
All right, let me preface this, and I'll keep it short. Let me preface this by saying, like, I am not rich. I am a missionary. Missionaries don't make a whole lot of money. Part of my path to being a missionary was to do the total body makeover, which is where you buckle down, eat beans and cornbread for a long period of time, so you can eliminate all of your debt and you only have living expenses. So part of the reason that we're able to actually vacation is in part because we don't have debt, and we prioritize like a few things like giving, helping the poor. That's something we prioritize. So we give money to that, and then we live on a budget, and so we budget money so we can go on the trip. I think it's important for people to know that, so people don't think, man, this person must be loaded. That's it. Recently, we went to me and some family. We went to Greece and to Turkey.
Is there any
Yeah.
particular reason that? I mean, like, how did that come about?
Yeah, like I love history. So like when first started traveling, traveled like it was like, hey, go to national parks in the US and then go study American history. So places where Virginia and Washington and places where the history of the United States is, and then down into the Caribbean, which is where slaves and stuff was brought over. And then eventually, after we a period of time and kind of traversing a lot of the local places, we end up like, okay, where do you want to go next? And so, where else do I want to go? I want to go see the history of the Bible. That's where I want to go. And so, we've been fortunate enough to start, the process of going to places where Paul actually preached the gospel on his three missionary journeys. And so that's part of the process when we're selecting a vacation, is to find a place that's affordable and in a place that has some history, so I can learn and add context to the stuff that books and stuff I'm reading and things I'm learning.
Right. So stop stretching. Uh, I heard you again.
That was
Uh,
something else. Yeah, okay. That was the table, but it wasn't a stretch.
um, I mean, and I've heard that there is like it gives you an extra layer of understanding when you actually be at the areas and locations that you've been reading about for so long. Did you experience that when you went to Greece?
Yeah, and Greece in particular, Athens, Greece, was the first stop. We spent like 2 days there, and part, you go there. Of course, you want to go to the Acropolis. You want to go see all of the amazing history of this, capital, this major city in Greece. And so went to the Acropolis, and right next to the Acropolis is Mars Hill, which is where in Acts 17 Paul actually preached about the unknown God. And like I've read that text of scripture many times. I read through the Bible, entire Bible, every single year. So I've read it, and maybe it's because I have become desensitized to it. Maybe it's because I haven't read commentaries and stuff on it. I haven't really thought about it. But one of the things I discovered is like the Acropolis in Mars Hill is like connected. There's like it's like maybe 5 minutes walking from the Acropolis to Mars Hill. And so the way the story plays out in the book of Acts, Paul goes to Athens. He walks around. He sees all these monuments to their gods. He even sees one marked to the unknown God. Then he gets invited by some local philosophers to come and share. So Mars Hill would be something akin to like Speaker's Corner in UK, where you want to publicly discuss philosophies, religion, and ideas. Hey, come over here and let's talk about it over here. And so when I'm actually there and I'm at the Acropolis and I'm walking around, and then I'm looking on the map and I see Mars Hill there, and I walk over to the Mars Hill part of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, Paul is probably talking about the Acropolis. There's all these monuments to the god, because the Acropolis is the top of the mountain that has the temple of Artemis, the temple of Night, the temple of, all these different temples to all these various gods that they actually worship. It's all in one place. It's like take you 10 minutes to walk, maybe 2 minutes to walk from one temple to the next temple. And it's just a mountaintop full of temples. So yeah, I never connected the dots between the Acropolis and Mars Hill until I was actually there and walking it and was like, oh wow, this all makes sense now.
Wow, that's definitely cool. So since we all can't travel to Greece, you've done us a favor and you took some photos. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at these photos and you can kind of give us some of the background of what we're seeing. So we're gonna start with this here. Emperor Trajan fountain.
Okay, so this is actually in Ephesus in Turkey. So
Okay.
Ephesus is very interesting, has a very interesting history and a very important role in the New Testament. About 25% of the New Testament was written because of Ephesus. Most scholars believe that First, Second, and Third John was written to churches that were in Ephesus. The book of Revelation, the seven churches in Asia Minor, that's Ephesus. The book of Ephesians, that's written to Ephesus, and both First and Second Timothy are believed to be written to Timothy in light of the church of Ephesus. So Ephesus is this very, very important city. It's like the fourth biggest city in the Roman Empire at the time. So it would be like for us Americans, it's like Chicago. So you got like New York, and you got like Los Angeles. You got the big major cities, and then you got like the little brother. Still big city. Like some of the benefits of big city, but not necessarily as popular as a big city. It's also significant because it's like Greek, Rome is divided into like Western and Eastern Empire at this time, and so this is like the kind of like the capital of the eastern part of the Roman Empire. So it's a very important city. It was a city that was. I'm telling you about stuff that I learned while I was there. So it's a very important city. It had the it was like Romans went around and poked people with the pointy end of the sword and took their stuff. That's Roman peace. When they talk about Pax Romana, it's like we go around. We're like, you guys are savages. Let us colonialize you. Sounds familiar. Let's colonialize you, savages. And so here we're gonna come over here. We're gonna teach you how to be sophisticated like us. And oh yeah, you're gonna because we poked half your people with the pointy end. You're now our slaves, and you gotta buy your way out of slavery. And if you do that well enough, you could potentially become a Roman citizen. That's how most cities. That's how most places within the Roman Empire became a part of the Roman Empire that were colonized. There were a few places that were actually free cities, and Ephesus is one of these free cities because the guy who was the like ruler of the region, Aurelius the third, he actually brokered a deal. When I die, I will will to you, the Roman Empire, everything that all of the region and stuff that's under my possession. And so he did that. And it was already sort of a sophisticated and upper echelon city. So basically they made all of the wealthy people citizens, and they just absorbed it. And so it had some liberties that the normal colonies don't have, because they allow some local people to stay in charge. They allow some local customs, mint their own coins. But yeah, Ephesus is significant. But this is Emperor Trajan's fountain is because during Roman times, they practiced emperor worship. Emperors were seen as deities, or the embodiment of deities.
Right.
It's something like that. It's kind of gray. So anyway, this here is in its heyday would have been a temple that because that the people of Ephesus had to go to and give gifts and worship the emperors. In this particular case, this is Emperor Trajan's temple.
Cool. Cool. Good stuff. And is this another part of it, or there's a different
No, this is different. This
site?
is different part of the city. Like only about 15% of the city of Ephesus has been excavated. They estimate about 250,000 people lived there at its height or around this time, and that so it was a huge city. Like what I saw, like it's huge. Like you see all these people around, you see all this space, you see all these grand buildings, and yeah. So these were just some of the remains of some of the other buildings, and looked like a little corridor there. But yeah, it was huge. It was like huge. We were walking. It had to be about a square mile worth
Hmm.
of space that we actually walked, which is again about 15% of actual space that's there. You see a little bit of everything, personal homes and public spaces. So keep going.
All right.
Also, in like we have bathrooms today at our houses, where in Rome had public bathrooms, and each one of those little holes is where you sit and talk to your neighbor as you use the bathroom. And they would have like sea sponges. They would dry out sea sponges, and they would have buckets of vinegar there, and vinegar was supposed to be like the antiseptic. That to keep it clean, but basically, sea sponges were toilet paper, and they were communal use. So you use it, you stick it in the bucket, and then underneath there, they would have aqueducts where it ran water from the coast all the way down through the city, and so it would just have rushing water to move the waste along from underneath the toilets. But like, and when you hear we I don't think we conceptualize very well. We see nudity spoken of in the Bible. When I was naked, did you clothe me? And like nudity is sort of like this common thing in the Bible, and it's in part because of stuff like this. In their world, you go to the bathroom in public next to whoever's sitting there.
So there wasn't like a roof. It was like outdoors, like that.
No, this was there would have been a roof over this. These are the remains. So this
Okay.
is yeah, this
All
is
right.
and it's just open, and this is what was left of it. The roof wasn't there anymore for the majority of the buildings. The roof aren't
So
there.
there's
Matter of
no
fact,
partitions. You literally were sitting next to the next
you just sit
person.
right next to the next person, inches. If you actually were standing there, those little holes are probably about 12 to 18 inches, not about probably about 12 to 18 inches apart. I'm guessing about 18 inches apart. So your
Wow.
thigh is probably touching your neighbor's thigh. Think that.
Okay, I rather
Pub-
not. But
Public bathrooms.
all right. Next up.
All right. So when you hear the word hermeneutics is it draws from this root concept of Hermes. Hermes was this Greek. He wasn't quite a god, but he basically would fly up, hear from the gods, come down,
Right.
talk to the
He's a messenger
humans.
of the gods.
The
Right.
messenger of the gods, right? He's like the mailman, the messenger of the gods, and so he's got these little wings on his feet. That's how you can tell it was him. And so, like all over the city of Ephesus were monuments to different deities of various forms.
Okay. And who we got? Who do we have here, sir?
I don't recall who those people were. They might have been some like local dignitaries, some people who like helped build the city and then they sponsor monuments to themselves to immortalize themselves
So
or the
do they
people
let you
did.
touch these things, or is it roped
Yes,
off?
you can walk up and touch like a lot of stuff. There's a few things that you can't touch, like the houses themselves. They had them covered. Like most of the city is uncovered. The houses they covered because there's a lot of tiles and stuff, tile work that's still
Okay.
preserved, and they want to preserve it longer, so they cover those things up, and you can't touch some of that stuff. But most of this stuff, you walk up. Like I literally would walk and think, like, man, if I push this hard enough, will this fall? Because it's like a giant tower of marble. It's crazy.
Wow. All right. And what do we have here?
Right. So in Acts 19, this is a different account when Paul was in the city of Ephesus. And so this is when when he's preaching the gospel and people started to convert to Christianity, and the local silversmith merchants got angry because they were losing money, because as people converted, they aren't buying silver ornaments to their patron deity Artemis. So like Wonder Woman is like an analog of Artemis. So Artemis is this woman. She's a twin. She's a daughter of Zeus. But she saw she saw pain and death in childbirth, so she had wanted nothing to do with it. So she remained a virgin for her entire life. And there was a stone that fell from the space, came down. They saw that as a sign from Artemis, carved it into her, and so they worship Artemis. Matter of fact, when you get to Timothy and it talks about women being
Right.
saved through childbearing,
Right.
that's
They talk about
alluding to
Artemis. Right.
Artemis and her protecting women during that very sensitive time that she was like that she had kind of pledged to avoid herself. But yeah, so yeah, patron deity. So this is the actual stadium where Paul went and preached. Where the crowd came in and they were yelling, "Greatest Artemis of the greatest Artemis of Ephesus." This is that stadium where they didn't let Paul preach inside of there because they were afraid that the crowd was going to kill him if he
Right.
actually went in there. So you can go back and read that story.
Oh, we could read a little bit right now, actually. It says here, about that time, there was a major disturbance about the way. For a person named Demetrius, a silversmith who made silver shrines of Artemis, provided a great deal of business for the craftsmen. When he had assembled them, as well as the workers engaged in this type of business, he said, "Men, you know that our prosperity is derived from this business. You see and hear that not only in Ephesus, but in almost all of Asia, this man Paul has persuaded and misled a considerable number of people by saying that gods made by hand are not gods. Not only do we run the risk that our business may be discredited, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis may be despised and her magnificence come to the verge of ruin, the very one all of Asia and the world worship." And I just want to take time out to really show, how Christianity was dangerous. We don't usually think of Christianity as dangerous because it's been so sanitized and mainstreamed and watered down. But Christianity, not trying to be dangerous, but because of the gospel had side effects, right? It affected economies. If a bunch of people were repenting as they were here, one of the first things they're going to do is throw out their idols and not purchase any new ones. So this actually had an economical effect in the city.
Mm-hmm.
The gospel was making people lose money, and these dudes were upset about that, and that's why they had to get together to do something about Paul and the Christians because they were literally bad for business, right? So,
Yep. And another like aspect to think about with this, like I know some people struggle with divine counsel theology, but like it's all over the place. Like patron deities is conceptually uh alluding to a very similar thing. This space here belongs to this deity here,
right,
and this deity
right.
is going to protect,
Cosmic
preserve, and
geometry.
do right. And so like it's right there in front of you when you actually think about it. Most people in the Bible shared this conceptual worldview, and the Bible tells us, hey, this is what the Jewish people's worldview was as well.
I mean,
Just
right when Naaman got healed, what did he do? He took some dirt from
dirt,
Israel and
some
brought it
sacred
with him.
space. It took
Sacred
some sacred
space.
space with him so that he would be able to commune with the God who had healed him, who he was pledging his life to.
Yep. Facts, facts,
Yeah.
facts. And here we are at the Ephesus Library. This is crazy.
Yes, sir. So, like, there's three other libraries I think that were more, or two other libraries, Alexandria, and I forget what the other library was. So this is like the third or fourth greatest library in sort of the history of the world, or at least the ancient world. So this was the library of Ephesus, and part of the library of Ephesus story is that it's where parchment became popularized. Previous to this, everyone's sort of like using papyrus
Right.
making scrolls and stuff. And so yeah, they there was
The
a
Codex.
yeah,
The
not
Codex.
just the codex, but I don't recall what she said. It was a famine. It was something that happened that made the price of papyrus skyrocket, and this is why they turned to parchment as like the next material to make it from. And so yeah, they popularized, this library popularized parchment over traditional leaves that they turned into books or scrolls.
So this wasn't the place where they bury the lies, right? The library.
Right. No.
I hate when they say stuff like that. But
I
anyway,
know it's ridiculous, right?
all right. So here we have Emperor Hadrian temple
Yep.
worship.
Yes, yes. Again, there these are like monuments. So like that's this is like another concept that I don't think Christians realize to some degree is being polemicized is eternal life. Eternal life's a real thing. 1 Corinthians 15. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is like you don't necessarily see that as a common theme in other books because other books are sort of contextualizing the message to its audience. So when you get to these Roman books, you see eternal life and the way that they immortalize, they're conceptualizing immortality was, hey, we're going to carve something in stone as a monument to me. We're going to carve. I'm going to sponsor, build something and do it. So yeah, again, they worship their emperors and they built these monuments, and these monuments to some degree represented their immortality. The fact that they would be around in a sense, in a weird quasi sense, is
It
sort of
kind of worked,
true.
right?
Two
Because
thousand years
here
later,
we are talking about it, right?
here we
Right.
are talking about Hadrian. He's still here, right?
That's true. That's true. All right. So these are the aqueducts.
Yeah, and that. What was amazing about that was like, I could hardly imagine what the technology of the time was that would make a city that I couldn't imagine a city being that big. I always imagine a city being more like a village, like something much smaller. And yeah, like the city, and then see the technology and how they like set it up, and like because you got to go from a high place to a low place in order to make water move,
Right.
right? Or you got to create some sort of a pump system. And this huge space has this elaborate system, this elaborate set of aqueducts. And like, it's like, man, they're making these things round. They make them fit together and they ship water over long distances. And so they excavated these and they left them in place so you can see how they ran alongside the city streets and in the city's infrastructure.
That reminds me of how for well, at least for me, for many years, I misunderstood the part in
Revelation.
Revelation that talks
Yeah.
about you're neither hot nor cold, you're lukewarm,
Mm-hmm.
and having the background information about how the hot springs and the
Yeah.
cold. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's right there. That's the aqueduct. That's the pipeline. So cool. So next up here,
Yeah, and this was part of what I was talking about. While this tile here is not uncovered, like if you look right behind it, you'll see at toward the back at the top of this picture, you'll see this structure. That structure up there at the top is an entire like four family unit, and like they had mansions back then. Only rich people lived in this community. This is like Beverly Hills or the upper Manhattan.
right?
This is like the where wealthiest people live. And so they had the latest and greatest technology. And like, man, 2,000 years ago, look at the meticulous detail in this tile. And it's still around. It still has the colors. It's still there. It is crazy. And then if you inside, I didn't have any pictures of from the inside of there. Inside of there, they have walls, and walls are equally ornate and decorated, and the paint and all of the stuff that they still on it today. 2,000 years later, they're very extravagant buildings, and they were large spaces, and it was four large spaces, and each large space was for one family. Think like 5,000-6,000 square foot. Some of these buildings were 2 and 3 stories. It was amazing for that time. I don't think, oh, they in the 3-story high rise. I think everything's a single story because they don't have technology to get above that.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
it was amazing.
Cool. And then wait, hold up. That's interesting. Okay, here we go. The Ephesus Council Hall.
Yeah. Okay. So as a free city, they had the privilege of governing themselves more or less. I mean, they still answer to the powers that be, but it's more like a city government today. Like the city of New York governs itself, but it still answers to the state of New York,
Right.
and then the state of New York, it governs itself and answers to the federal government. And so, Ephesus being a free city, they had city councilmen and they governed themselves. And so this was the place that they met and they discussed city issues. And so again, you can touch everything. I'm literally inside of there. If you look closely toward the top of it, you see like stones, and toward the bottom you see marble. The marble is from the original structure. The stones were to emulate the size so that you can kind of get the scale of what it was like when it was in its original form. So some of that is reconstruction from materials that were around there, and the bottom part of it is actual original.
How were the acoustics?
It was good. It was good. Like you can talk and hear. That's probably not as far as it looks. I'm guessing that was maybe about 25 feet from the camera to where I'm standing at there, but it was good. It was really good. It was a lot. As a matter of fact, it was maybe about 12 people in there while I was there. Everyone was kind of taking pictures because there's some other little parts of it you can't see off to the side, and you can hear people. Everybody hears everybody.
Cool, cool. And next up, we have the city market.
Yeah, okay. A lot of looks like rubble here, but like when Demetrius the silversmith was talking, this was his this is the marketplace that he would have been selling
Mm,
his goods. You know,
right,
he was like the what was he, like the union rep or the guy who like
right, right.
ran the silversmiths.
The
This
shop
is the
steward, the shop
right,
steward.
the shop steward. This is the guy. This is a space where they did all their market. Like, and one thing we don't necessarily see, you might see it in another picture. I don't know. I don't recall if I got a picture of it, but like the coast of the as in Asiat, which sea is it? I forget which sea it is. Used to come all the way into the city of Ephesus, and it was a port city. Now it's the water had receded over time, and so now it's like quite a ways. I think it might even be over a mile from where the water actually is now, and where the city of Ephesus, the remains of the city of Ephesus, still are today. But yeah, this would have been a hustling, bustling port. I forget what's the name of the market in Philly where you go in and you just walk around. It's all those shops. That's what it makes me
The
think of.
something terminal,
Yeah,
something
the something
terminal.
terminal,
Yeah,
Reading
yeah,
Terminal, Reading
yeah.
Terminal.
Reading terminal. Right,
That's what it
right.
makes me. That's what in my mind. It's bigger than Reading Terminals, space wise. But that's what I imagine. It's like you just go around and you just see like people selling their merchandise and goods all over the
Right.
place. There's food here, there's purses there, clothes here, and it's just
It's
you
the
just walk
mall.
around.
It's the
It's a
mall, basically.
Yeah,
Right, right.
exactly. It's the mall, ancient mall.
There you go. And now, speaking of Mars Hill, here we are.
And Mars Hill's pretty small. Mars Hill is maybe the top of it is maybe the size of a tennis court. It's not very big at
Oh
all.
wow.
It just got these little stairs that hit that you lead up to it, and you say up at the top. At the time, it was actually closed because they were doing some. They had some archaeologists up there doing some excavating, so I didn't get a chance to go up there and actually stand on top of it. But it was still cool. I basically got to walk like right next to it. Didn't get a chance to actually go walk up on top of it.
Okay, okay. And
Yeah,
that's
and
you.
this is me. Where I imagine Paul was at, where he was talking about. I saw these monuments to the unknown gods, and so each of these buildings behind me is a temple. And if I think there was, well, I took a video where I panned around where you could see there was like many temples up there. Temple to
Wow.
Artemis, which was one of the seven wonders of the world. Temple to Nike. There were like some temples that had multiple deities carved into them with very great detail. And again, you can just walk up to this stuff and touch it. It is crazy what
Wow.
they allow you to do.
Wow. And
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's the
actually
same
that
pictures from me.
yeah, I just got rid of you.
There you
So
go. I'm gonna say that's the same picture, but yeah.
all right.
Yeah, there's another one. Again, you can see the change in color is from where they had to like pour concrete and stuff to kind of reconstruct for safety reasons versus the ancient looking tones where
Right.
those are the original. And see how people are just standing right there, just standing and walking inside of the temple.
That's crazy.
Okay, this is the temple of Nike, I
Uh,
believe. So the deity of like
so this is
sports.
where the Jordan threes are made.
That's where the Jordan threes are made right there. That's Temple of Nike. And that's like a other temples. You can see the top, you can see the pillars from the other temple kind of up in the sun. Or I
Mm,
mean in the shadows of the other temples. But yeah, it's like it's really amazing getting up there. You feel it a little bit, when you're breathing, going up that elevation.
mm,
It's not necessarily strenuous as much as I think, just you're going elevated, the air gets a little thinner up there. But it was really, really amazing just to be up there and to walk around and touch all of these temples.
wow.
I'm sure
And
someone thinks I'm a heretic because of
no,
that. Because I'm
but
touching temples
that
and I
was
think it's amazing.
that was the environment in which the primitive church existed and thrived. So that's just what it
Mhm.
was. But speaking of this thing that Paul talks about, right? At Mars Hill, in Acts 17:28, says, "In him we live and move and have our being," as even some of your own poets have said, "For we are indeed his offspring." And
Yeah.
what's interesting, right? And of course you know this, but he's quoting pagan poets,
Hmm.
right? And
Yep.
some of these guys is it Epimenides.
Yeah,
Epimenides.
epinomes. Yeah.
As for him, we live and move and have our being was written by Epimenides in arguing for the eternal Zeus against other Cretan philosophers who seemed to be arguing that the Greek god was dead. So this dude was actually an apologetic for Zeus.
Yep.
And Paul is quoting this guy who's defending Zeus, right? But of course, Paul is not defending Zeus as well. He's just saying, hey, you know what? This part of his defense, we can agree here.
Yep.
You know, God, we have our being because of God. Now, which God, of course, you know,
Right.
we're gonna differ on. But the concept of we come from, you know, from God, that's true. So
Mm.
also it says he says here they fashion a tomb for you, holy and high one Cretans, always liars, evil beasts, idle bellies. But you are not dead. You live and abide forever. For in you we live and move and have our being. So that's where
Yeah.
the quote comes from.
And if
This
it,
he's throwing shots at the Cretans.
yes, and Paul throws some shots at the Cretans and Titus. Very
Right,
similar
right.
shots.
Yeah, that's wild.
Cretans are gluttons and liars, and this is true. I think he said something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then here, this is a another quote here. Let us begin with Zeus, whom we mortals never leave unspoken. For every street, every marketplace, which we saw just now, is full of Zeus. Even the sea and the harbor are full of this deity. Everywhere, everyone is indebted to Zeus, for we are indeed his offspring.
Offspring. Yep.
Right? So this would resonate with the audience that he was talking to. They knew exactly what he was referencing. Right? So and that whole exchange with Paul is interesting, right? Because through that whole discourse, there is not one "thus saith the Lord" in that whole discourse. He
Nope.
doesn't quote one scripture at all. He doesn't make any reference to the Torah or the Tanakh. But yet, he was able to convey the gospel.
He became all things to all men. Go
Right,
figure. I
right.
wonder who. Oh, wait a minute. That was Paul who said that, wasn't it?
Yeah,
You know what else about X17 that like I think is helpful in an apologetic as apologetic. So recently I was watching this video with Wes Huff on it. I forget what show it was, but it was like a panel of guys seemingly not Christians interviewing him and asking kind of like asking him rapid fire questions. And so one of the questions they were asking about is about unbelievers going to hell. And I can't remember the exact context of it, but Russ was like offering his apologetic for it. And one of the things I think is so helpful is like when people challenge that question with me, well, just God's going to the unknown, the heathen, he's just going to send the heathen and unknown God. He's going to send the heathen to hell because the heathen, just because he didn't hear the name of Jesus, is that God's fault? And I like to point out how like three things. One is in Romans 1, Paul says that all of nature cries out for God. So in other words, there's you can even if there's never another person around, you can get a sense that God exists because nature alludes to that. Two is this passage here in Acts 17. It says at the beginning of that passage, when Paul is initially preaching, he says, "The God who made everything and made all humans from one man." And he established the times and places that they should live. He did this that they might reach out to him and perhaps find him, though he is not far from each of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. The passage, the part that we just read. But it's like it says right there, God placed peoples at the perfect time in the perfect place that they might that for perhaps for the purpose for them to reach out to him and perhaps find him, because in him we live and move and have our being. So not only does nature allude to the fact that God exists, God actually placed us in the perfect places and times so that we could potentially find him, for us to actually reach out and find him. So there's not a more optimal place conceptually. There's not a more optimal place that you're going to find God than wherever you were born. That's for all of us. And then thirdly is like God sent people, like in their case, God sent Wes Huff to them. He's there telling them the gospel, the good news of Jesus.
right,
To
right.
our audience and to people who see this video subsequently, you're here hearing the good news that Jesus has come and made a way for you to be reconciled with him. Be reconciled. I make this appeal, be reconciled. Right. So yeah, nature, perfect place and time, and God sent people like us, missionaries, and you, and if you're a Christian, to other people to tell them. So when people, make that argument about the heathen and the unknown God, I just think that, like, you're missing the point. God is making every effort so that everybody can know. Your assumption is that God doesn't care, or he's somehow careless and not considering the fact that there's a person out there that's not going to hear the gospel. No, the exact opposite. God has done everything to make sure every person hears the gospel,
Right.
and so we don't have to fear these people who never heard the gospel. So yeah.
But and that's the thing, right? To hear the gospel, for it to register, for it to be understood, you have to convey it in a way where they can digest it. So you're going to use things, since you're introducing something new, you want to use things that they already know to describe the quote unquote new thing that you're saying.
Yep.
Right.
Contextualization.
Right. And
Go figure.
but that's something that we see Jesus doing with the parables. He's using these mundane stories of purchasing fields and sheep and shepherds to illustrate deep theological points, so that the common man could understand.
Yeah. And
And right.
go ahead.
No,
That's
I mean,
that's such a powerful point. The Bible is filled with contextualization. Just like we're supposed to contextualize today, we talk about urban apologetics. We're
right,
contextualizing apologetics, right?
right.
Like here's some contextualization footnotes that you all need to know. The word charis, what word is that in English?
Grace.
That's pretty important, right?
Very.
It doesn't appear in the Gospel of Mark or Gospel of Matthew. It only appears in the Gospel of Luke once, referring to Jesus, and the Gospel of John 3 times, referring to Jesus, although the Gospel of John does refer that Jesus brings it. But like, if it's such an essential, important concept, why doesn't it really appear in the Gospels? Why does it only appear in the rest of the New Testament, which is predominantly to Gentiles? It's because that's a concept that's within the Greco-Roman zeitgeist. That's their worldview. That's a concept that's within their world. Same thing with justification. You don't find justification in the Gospels. You find justification in so I think that, like, we have to begin to recognize that the Bible is contextualized, and there's
Now
not like
let me put a thing here, because I already know what people are going to say.
yeah.
Chris don't believe in grace.
Apparently.
Chris says that he doesn't believe that the justification is for the God. That's not what he's saying, guys.
Oh, I want to crack a bad joke right now, but I'm not
No,
going
don't
to
do
do
it.
it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm gonna
That's
be on
not
my
what he's
best.
saying,
I'm
guys.
gonna be on my best behavior. That's just for the record, just for clarification. I'm not saying that. I'm pointing out how the Bible contextualizes. Yes, grace is an important concept, but I'm saying, if you think that you can't live without it, then why isn't it in Matthew and Mark? It's because that audience, they were Jewish people. Jesus preached in Palestine. Those are Jewish people. Jesus used Jewish social context in order to continue to express the message to them. Paul used Greco-Roman concepts in order to mention it to them. Sometimes they use like more Greek, like John, more Greek concepts, like the Gospel of John, to conceptualize it, because they're trying to reach everybody.
Right.
Like when Jesus was crucified. It's my last thing, because I know we done with talk about my little trip and all these pictures. When Jesus crucified, King of the Jews was written in 3 languages. It was written in Greek, in Aramaic, and in Latin. That's because the western part of Rome's official language was Latin. I don't know if people know that. They probably think most people think it's Greek, because they're not necessarily familiar with the nuance. But Rome's official language was Latin. They inherited Greek from Hellenization. They inherited that. Everybody already spoke it. They didn't do away with it. Latin was the language of the educated. Latin, if you actually go there and you look at the language on the buildings is Latin usually. Greek was like the language of commerce. It was the everyday language that everybody had learned through Hellenization. And the Aramaic was another language that existed because there were people there who kept it alive and said, that's our language. We're not giving it up. Yep. So those are the language. And you also have like a little bit of Syriac and Coptic in Egypt and Syria. But for the most part, eastern side was like predominantly Greek. Western side was like predominantly Latin. Latin was the official language. Most people were bilingual, multilingual, spoke multiple languages, because that was just the world that they lived in.
Right.
Yeah. Contextualization, very important thing. and we see it all over the place if we slow down, pay attention, and process what we're reading. But if we don't, we sound bites sound plausible, and we kind of run with it
Right.
and start a
And
YouTube channel and lead
we
a bunch
have
of
to
people astray.
understand how they contextualize in order for us to not misinterpret scripture. Because when
Mhm.
we understand the references they're using, man, the Bible just opens up so much more. Like
It
for
opens
instance,
up.
like the Gospel of Matthew, right? We all know that it was geared towards a Jewish audience. And when you read it the overarching theme is the Exodus. Well, why would Matthew use the Exodus? Well, every Jew knew the Exodus. Whether you was in rabbinical school or whether you was just a blue collar worker, everybody understood the Exodus. How God, with his mighty hand, came to Egypt, defeated the pantheon of the Egyptian gods, made Pharaoh look stupid, and got Israel up out of there. Right? Everyone knew that. So he uses that motif to explain, hey guys, there's now a greater Exodus with a greater Moses, Jesus, right?
Mm.
So when you understand that, certain things now open up. For instance, when the apostles asked Jesus, teach us to pray, right? And he does what we call the Our Father, right? And he says, give us today our daily bread. Well, when in the history of Israel did they receive a daily allotment of bread? When did that happen? During the Exodus, when they were in the wilderness. So, what is Jesus conveying to them when he's teaching them this model of prayer? Because remember, when they were in the wilderness, they just left the land of bondage, Mitzrayim, right? Egypt. They were headed towards the promised land, but they were still in the wilderness. So when they said teach us to pray, Jesus is telling these guys, you need to pray like people who just left bondage and they're on their way to the promised land, but you're in the wilderness still. And if you're in
Ooh,
the wilderness, you need me to be there with you on the daily to provide for you because the wilderness is no joke. That's how you should pray. That's the mentality you need to have when you pray. Right?
ooh,
Mind blowing.
chills. Yes, and let me contextualize it for okay. I'm gonna say something controversial, but it's not really controversial if you think about it. I'm
Everybody
just
wants to
being
be
descriptive.
controversial in my video. I don't understand. But
I'm
anyway,
not being controversial, but people think I'm controversial just for
do
speaking
you
the
think?
truth.
Do
I
you
don't know
think?
why. So
Do you
anyway,
think?
in America has an exodus. It's called the 4th of July.
Wow, that's true.
That's their exodus. And
That's
every
true.
year, or at least that's the white people exodus,
That's
because
true.
we have an exodus too. It's what? What's our exodus?
Juneteenth.
Juneteenth. And we know our exodus. And
It,
we narrate the story of our people. We say, listen, it didn't just happen in what was it, 1868? What was it, 1864? I can't remember the date right now. My brain mixes up numbers. It happened when Galveston, Texas was finally liberated, when some soldiers went to Galveston, Texas. That's when it was over.
right.
Juneteenth. That's when it officially ended.
Right.
Not when the first proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation, not a year or so later when Congress extended that and abolished slavery throughout the entire country, but when they actually went and freed the last of the slaves. Theoretically, there's probably still some after that, but that's
Right.
the historically that's sort of the marker for us. So yeah, so we have an Exodus story. America has an Exodus story. Every nation has an Exodus story because every nation potentially came from some other nation. And we're out of Dodge. We're starting our own new thing here. Yeah. So
Right.
contextualization is just a part of communication. It's what
Right.
it's how you communicate effectively.
There you go.
Without it, I'm just going to sound like a babbler because I'm going to be using words and concepts and ideas. You have no clue what I'm talking about because you're
Yep.
not familiar with all of that. So yeah, so contextualization is normal communication.
Absolutely.
So I didn't say
Ab-
anything controversial. I just explained why we think the way we think.
no, absolutely. Absolutely. That's how we're wired. So, man, with that being said, man, what was some like main takeaways that you got from the trip? What are some things that really resonated with you once you had a chance to really think about your experience there?
Yeah, particularly with Turkey, like man, so much of history, like our tour guide was like explaining our tour guide was explaining that like reminding me like, hey, Sumerians, they were here, and Constantinople is here, and the Ottomans were here, and like so much of world history, so much of Christian history happened in Greece. Paul is Tarsus is in Greece, the churches in Ephesus. Apollos is the church in Ephesus. Arguably, potentially, the Apostle John associated with Ephesus, because all his letters, First, Second, Third John, and Revelation, is it? So like, there's this rich biblical history on the continent of Turkey, and it made me want to go back and spend more time in Turkey and go to more of the historical sites and absorb more of that. Because man, like I was excited about Ephesus. I was slightly more excited about I was slightly Athens, and then in Ephesus. But man, just being there and realizing that so much of world history is there on that continent. Some of the oldest civilizations there in Turkey. That was awesome. Theoretically, arguably, who knows that some people believe that the Noah's Ark is there in Turkey.
Right, right,
On a
right.
mountain in Turkey. That's what
Mount
it is. So like,
Ararat. Right, right.
exactly. So it's like so much of history flows through Turkey. So yeah, that was one of the things that stood out to me. And then secondly was like my imagination about the level of technology that existed at the time was just like, man, this was more like Westeros than the little what I would
Right.
have imagined it was like. I would imagine it was these small little places because they didn't have technology to build up 3 stories and that far out, and to just see how vast their technology, how vast that city was, and how wide their technology was just is just awe inspiring. It was just really great to see.
Wow. So I guess you would recommend people, if they can, to see it for themselves.
Absolutely, I recommend people. Turkey, the U.S. dollar is like worth of the Turkey money is worth about 45 cents to the U.S. dollar. So it's one of the most cost effective places to travel, just because our dollar is so strong there. And so yeah, if you want to go somewhere, go there. The food's great in
Mm,
Turkey. Let me tell you that much. The food in Turkey is great, and the hospitality in Turkey is great. Those people know how to treat people.
nice.
They take
Cool,
they
man.
take pride in it, great pride in it.
Which,
Hey, give
by the
me give me
way,
1 second. My
yeah.
dog's sitting at the door. I gotta let her out, or she's gonna have an accident. Give me 1 second. Just 10 seconds.
Okay.
Lucy, let's go.
So we got Tyler Lott in the building. We got
All right,
Rochelle in the building.
I'm back.
Angela J. We got SOC in the building. Bodega Lady Michelle Turner in the building. Trust and Believe is in the building. I'm definitely appreciate everybody here. Mr. Phil Fox. So yeah. So with that being said, man, thank you so much for sharing your trip and what you've learned. And man, it was great. So thank you so much. So with that being said, Padres in Detroit, BK, we out. Peace.